Thank you for joining us for another We Connect International in South Africa and Procter and Gamble webinar series. Today, we've actually got one of the Procter and Gamble experts from Nigeria. A great sister has joined us to share her expertise on international and regional markets. I'd like to ask everybody, please, to make sure that you're on mute so we can minimize the noise. As you join, please go on mute. I can see there are a few people who are not yet on mute. Dolly, Gail, Helen, thank you so much. Can I also mention that at the end of the webinar, you'll be getting a feedback form. Please do us a favor and fill it in. We'd really like to hear from you, how the topic was, and we appreciate the feedback. And from there, I'm going to hand straight over to Mikhail, also from P&G, who will then introduce our amazing speaker.
Great. Thank you, Jean. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I think just as some housekeeping, can you please remain on mute? It helps with a lot of the feedback and disturbance sounds. Also, if you have any questions, please send them through on the chat, and we'll stop twice during the presentation to touch on those. Next, I would like to hand over to our P&G experts on government relations to take you through the topic today, which is access to regional and international markets.
Thank you, Mikhail. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone, wherever you're joining from. So my name is Temitope Iluyemi. I'm the Government Relations Director for Africa at Procter and Gamble. And I'm sharing a slide with my profile on it, where you'd see my background is actually in pharmacy. So I qualified as a pharmacist, I trained, and I worked in the hospital as well as in the retail sector, and also had other education or executive education at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government in Boston. Now, I've had a broad set of experiences in P&G since I joined in 1998, about 21 years ago, so I'm an adult in P&G. I joined in sales and I worked through several countries, Nigeria, Togo, Ghana, as well as South Africa. In 2006, I moved into the supply chain operations and I led that group for West Africa after leaving South Africa. Following that, I decided I wanted a different experience, and the company obliged me and offered me a role in external relations, which again I led for our expansion markets at the time, Greater West Africa, and then took on Nigeria as well. And since 2013 to date, I am leading government relations for Africa, so responsible for all the countries in Africa, ensuring P&G's business viability and also managing policy issues with policy leaders. I've had a number of contributory roles which had nothing to do with my current role. So I've had those opportunities in P&G as well. As a pharmacist, I also served as the superintendent pharmacist for our Ibadan plant, where we manufactured Vicks products at the time. And I also sit on the board of directors of P&G Nigeria. You'll see a lovely picture to my left. That's my family, my beautiful family of 4. We live in different parts of the world. So, and my husband and I think we've had 4 split family experiences, always supporting each other to move our careers along. And you'll see also, I love adventures. That's my thing. On your left, I'm flying over the Grand Canyon in the US, and I have an objective of visiting the 7 natural wonders of the world. Well, I don't want to say before I die, because that's going to be a long while, touch wood, but I have this dream of reaching all the natural wonders of the world, and I have already done 4 out of the 7 natural wonders. So that's me. Scenic views. Even I love driving through the mountains of the Drakensberg in South Africa as well, which used to be my home for several years. So I feel very much at home there. And yes, that is just me. I'm looking forward to having this session with you all, and glad that you can all join, even though we cannot see each other at this point. I hope there will be an opportunity sometime to meet you all in person. Now, our topic today is access to regional and international markets, and I would aim to take you through some of the guidelines for going global with your business. There are so many opportunities that exist for you, even as an SME or even a big business, to expand into regional markets or into the global value chains. Many of us, like multinationals, actually work with a number of SMEs like yourselves to help us penetrate deeper into some of the smaller markets around us. As you've seen in my bio, I was part of entering new markets for P&G, either as a supply chain leader or as a sales leader or as a external relations leader. So this is something that I'm quite familiar with. So in this training today, I'm just going to try to take you through some of these concepts. I will talk about what you need to do before you decide to go global, some concepts of international trade, take you through free trade agreements and talk about how you can utilize them. And then we'll touch very briefly on business ethics, focusing on reputation building. And as we go through the training, I will go through certain pieces of the training and then ask you, and then stop for questions intermittently. And then at some point, I'm going to have to ask you questions as well. So please feel free to use the chat box on your right to pop in your questions as we go along. Now, what does going global entail? It might look complex, and it is complex. It is not easy, and it's not comfortable either, moving out of your known area into the unknown. But as you've seen, a number of companies have been able to succeed at going from being an SME to going regional and expanding into international markets. We have several examples. P&G is one such example. I like to tell the story of how two brothers came together, two brother-in-laws came together, a candle maker and a soap maker, and they formed a partnership, which was Procter and Gamble, selling candles, selling soap, and today this partnership has blossomed into a multinational that we all have, that has existed for almost 200 years around the world today. So saying that there's absolutely no reason why each one of us cannot go global. There's so many examples of African countries that have gone global as well. Several of them, So there is Sasol, there's MTN, there is Dangote, there is Massmart, several of them going global. Many of them also starting from small beginnings. Now, going global, like we said, is not going to be straightforward like that. You need to change your business strategy. Domestic policies are very different from regional or international policies. So you need to understand that. You need to understand the cultural differences. You need to understand the business ethics and standards in the countries that you want to expand into. Now, it's even easier more than ever today to expand globally or regionally because of online sales. Many of us are shopping in shops or in countries that we have actually never been to. Many of us are buying things from Alibaba, from stores in China without having to go to China. So that's another avenue of going global. And I think in the current context of our world today, there will be a bigger growth of e-commerce, as we call it. Now, I want to say that in a number of the concepts that I'll be sharing today, if you remember nothing, you need to remember to always understand the culture of the place that you're going to. Pay attention to the culture of the place because it can make or mar your business. And I like to share the example of Nike in the 1990s when they launched Nike Air. They launched this in Saudi Arabia without fully understanding the cultural context and connotations of, how the expressions that they put. So they put Nike Air and they wrote it in Arabic. And, the way it's written in Arabic, it's read almost like Allah, and that offended certain religions. And a lot of people boycotted their products. It took a lot of work for Nike to become successful again in Saudi or in the region. It's better to avoid such waste and such loss and the reputation that comes with it by understanding the cultural context and the cultural norms wherever you're going. Again, when you're expanding into new markets, you want to start with what's comfortable for you. You might want to start, if you're an English-speaking person or an English-speaking business, you might want to start in English-speaking countries and, slowly then expand to other countries, ensure you engage experts as well. You need to also understand the regulations and the laws that pertain in the countries where you're going to be expanding into. Now, I was talking about, what are the things that you do before you go global? The first thing is a landscape assessment, extensive research. We break it down into the primary research and the secondary research. The primary research are all those things that you can find out, through online media, through social media, the company's websites, export agency websites. Gather as much information as much as possible. Understand what kind of regulations address the products that you'd like to export into those countries. Then you move on to the second stage, which we call the secondary research. Now, this includes consumer or customer immersion. It might involve you visiting those countries, understanding the nuances of consumers in that country. And this is something that we do very well at Procter and Gamble. We, as a multinational, we don't just bring in our products into any country. We go into that country with our own formula, but then we try to understand what are the needs, what are the habits in that country that would actually help us win with a particular product. I will give an example of our Ariel detergent. So Ariel, in some countries, it's called Tide, but in Africa, it's actually formulated specifically for African stains. So we found out what is the toughest stain in Africa. It's palm oil. So we have to engineer the Ariel to ensure that it can deal with palm oil stains. Palm oil stains might not be the biggest stains in some other countries. Maybe it's cheese. And then we design to ensure that it can address the specific issues. So a lot of research, you need to, talk to your customers as well. How do they go to market in those countries? Pay close attention to, local customs, local nuances. I think that is really one of the biggest things. Understand the political landscape, understand the regulatory landscape, which varies from one place to the other. Understand your competitors who have been there before you. Talk to your customers, understand what kind of challenges, what are they looking for? So all these, goes into probably the 70% of the work that you do before you actually decide to launch will be in this landscape assessment phase. It took us, when I was launching as the supply chain leader into Greater West Africa, it took us a good 6 to 9 months assessing the landscape, feeding back to the business what we had found out, what the challenges were, how to adapt the products, what kind of labeling regulations they had in one country versus the other. Everything had to, we had to make sure that we were compliant to the different countries that we wanted to access, to ensure that, again, we did not violate any laws that would cost us any reputational damage. Now, the other thing, again, when you have made the decision to go global, you need to understand effective advertising and branding strategies. I talked about customer and consumer immersion. So in going global, in your marketing strategy, you need to understand who is your customer. Who's your target market, for instance? Are you reaching out to the millennials? What do they want? Are you reaching out to the geriatrics? What do they need in that country? And ensure that all that information is fed into your advertising and media. We have what we call the FMOT in P&G, first moment of truth. Actually starting from the 0 moment of truth. The 0 moment of truth you probably have done during your landscape assessment, where you understood the landscape, and now you're coming with a product that hopefully addresses the issues of the consumers in that country. But at the first moment of truth, what makes a consumer pick you over the clutter on the shelf? It depends on how you have communicated your brand, how you have communicated your benefits, how, again, not just about how much you spend or how much advertising you actually put out there. There's lots of advertising, there's lots of money spent in advertising that doesn't quite catch on. However, if you understand your audience, if you understand what they need, and you address it both on shelf as well as in the media advertising, then, and more importantly, sell your best points. Why should they choose you? what promise does your brand deliver? We try and work to ensure that our brands deliver its promise every day to our consumers, starting, whether it's the babies, the Pampers that we have, or the Always to women, or, Ariel, like I mentioned earlier on. So it's really critical that even after a consumer has picked you off the shelf, you actually, when they take you home, in the second moment of truth, do you then deliver on the promises that you have, nicely advertised to them on air? And then the third thing, again, in going global, having done the first two, marketing, putting yourself out there, utilizing all the knowledge that you have acquired during your landscape assessment, is then also to optimize digital engagement. Ensure that, you engage experts in technology to ensure that your products, your adverts are trending. People can see it. You have the right keywords in them. Some of you may have attended an earlier course in digital transformation. Some of these ideas were shared, but in the world that we are in today, we certainly cannot avoid technology. So I would encourage you, if you're not technically savvy, ensure you have somebody who understands technology. Now, I want to talk briefly about the concepts of international trade. What is international trade? It's simply the exchange of goods and services. You bring goods in, you bring goods out. There are three types of international trade. Import, we all understand that, goods flowing into a country. Export, goods flowing out of a country. And then there's entry port, where you bring in goods. In some cases, they call it re-export. You bring in goods into a particular country, and then you add value to it before you export it to another country. Now, what do I mean by add value? And these are some of the things that actually make a difference between whether you succeed in expanding regionally or not. Once you understand what a region needs and you have the right goods for them, I'll give an example. So if you cannot find certain raw materials in certain places, but you still want to be able to benefit from some of the policies of a particular country, you can bring in like bulk items and have them repackaged in another country. The repackaged goods may translate into a different product under a different code for export, which then entitles you to certain other benefits in that country when you export them. In some countries as well, you have export expansion grants or policies where activities like entry port are encouraged. I'll give you an example like our blades and razors, Gillette, which we manufacture just in 2 plants around the world, most of them coming from Germany. However, the plastic blade, can be manufactured almost anywhere. It's just a plastic handle. So if I find a country that encourages me to produce those plastic handles, I can bring in my top grade world-class blades from Germany and have them assembled in another country, adding value, turning just blades to shaving sticks. So it's a completely different product, packaged, assembled, and then shipped out to another country. South Africa is a good example of that in the auto industry, where different parts are manufactured in different parts of the continent and indeed the world, assembled in South Africa and then exported. So looking at opportunities to add value to your good is a very good way also to expand into regional markets. There are several advantages to international trade. One, it also gives you an exposure to opportunities that people with a domestic market may not have seen or may not have access to. You have international customers as well as consumers. Your brand becomes global. It's well known around the world. So it has a lot of advantages, and hopefully if the business is well run, it's very profitable for you as well. But then don't forget the background work that really goes into this. Several benefits, like I mentioned, it enables you to use your comparative advantage from one country to the other. If there's something that you have in your country that you do better than others, or that is in plenteous supply in your country, then you can look to exporting that into another country. If I use Japan as an example, highly industrialized country, they don't have oil, so they have to buy oil from the likes of Nigeria, Sasol in South Africa, and other oil producing countries. Again, it offers you the economies of scale. The more you produce, the better your cost structure and the more successful your brand can be. One of the things that we do is, like I mentioned, that our blades and razors are produced in just 2 plants. It's a highly technical production system. So in order to get those goods at the best value to our consumers, we concentrate the manufacturing in one place, and then we ship out either in part or in whole to other places to ensure that that item is produced at the best value possible to reach the final consumer. International trade also encourages competition. The more you expand into other countries, the more you refine your production processes, the better you are going to be. The better you are going to be to compete at global and regional levels, the easier it will be to integrate you into global value chains of multinationals, and the overall the better, and there will be better and improved standards across the countries or the continents where we choose to export. And the last thing is technology transfer. It's an opportunity to learn from one country to the other. When you take goods from one country to the other, or when you have a different country come into your, a different company come into your country, then they will definitely build capacity. They will train people. It will create employment, and people will learn new skills. A lot of us have learned a lot of new skills, by working with multinationals. Obviously, as part of your background work, you need to understand, whether your goods or services are actually needed in that country. Is it in plenty of supply? Who is doing it? What's the demand for it? How do you adapt it to meet the needs in those countries? So when you take all that into consideration, I believe most certainly exporting or importing goods, international trade becomes a lot easier. Now, I want to talk also briefly about trade agreements. As you think about going global, you also need to understand that different countries have different structures or trade agreements that enable you move goods cheaply from one place to the other. These agreements could be between 2 countries. It could also be through a number of countries, which is actually the more popular one. You also have to understand that the laws that govern international transactions are sometimes different from that govern domestic transactions, even in the same country. You need the experts, you need your lawyers to help you navigate this. Now, trade agreements also very briefly falls into 2 categories. You have the preference programs, which usually is a preferential program from one country to another country or to a set of countries without demanding something back in return. So in many cases, it's done, to promote the economies of, least developed countries or developing nations. For instance, you may have heard of the Generalized Goods Preference, GSP, as well as the AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. These are preferential systems from the EU or the US to developing nations like Africa. The AGOA is specific to Africa. It enables you to export a list of products duty-free into the US. But of course, you need to meet certain standards, quality standards, and before you can export. But it helps to understand all this, as we go global. What kind of agreements are already in place between the country you are in and the country you want to export or import into? These are some of the things that multinationals like ourselves use to ensure that we can leverage all the advantages of expanding globally or expanding into a particular country. The second one is the bilateral or multilateral trade agreements. Now, this is a trade agreement amongst several countries to remove duty or to remove movement of people. So it liberalizes the movement of goods, and sometimes as well as services, and sometimes also people, and in some cases also extends to customs union, where this group of countries also have the same currency, like in SACU, for those of you who are from Southern Africa. It's a lot more complex than the preference programs or the unilateral programs, because it involves a number of countries, it involves a lot of negotiations. And, usually it's premised on getting goods cheaper around the region. And if you know how to navigate your way around this, it offers some huge advantages. that in some countries where you have duties as high as 35%, if you have a product if you can manufacture or sell a product between two countries that have a duty free agreement, you can definitely then export at zero, and that's a huge saving for you already. Now, in leveraging these trade agreements, obviously you need to understand what they are. You need to understand, what it entails, what is eligible, which countries are eligible, even which products are eligible. You need to understand that even within the same class of products, certain countries have specific exclusions. So if, for instance, in South Africa, we can export, Pampers, for instance, carries zero duty for export. But some other items related to Pampers, let's say wipes, for instance, may not carry the same incentive. So you need to really peel the onions, go into the details, and understand these programs. The time to look at this is obviously during your landscape assessment. You need to understand this before you go into any of these countries. It is one of the things that P&G has leveraged across the world to maximize the potential to expand into different countries, because different regions have different groups. So it's NAFTA in North America, it's the EU in Europe, it's, we're coming now into Africa with the fragmented economic blocks, but with different agreements within them. So like I said, you need to really peel the onions. The devil is in the details. The fact that a good is produced in one country doesn't mean it will automatically qualify for duty-free in another country. You need to understand what rules apply. The rules of origin within a certain block usually are the same, but sometimes there are some differences as well. Many countries also require, when I talked about entry port earlier, I said, you could import products into one country, add value to it, and export it. A number of countries have very, very concise calculations of what value addition needs to go into a product before you can actually claim any export incentives for having them manufactured in that country. So you need to understand that as well. Now, moving that into Africa, I mentioned that P&G has leveraged a lot of the trade agreements across the world to maximize its potential to export. So if you look at Africa, the table or the chart that I have to my left shows you all the various economic blocks and trade agreements that exist within Africa. Some of them active, a lot of them actually inactive, or moribund, or just not viable. You would see COMESA, one of the biggest, actually has 21 countries, probably one of the well-working ones, scans all the way from Egypt all the way to East Africa. So we leverage that as well. East Africa community is also a very cohesive unit, and they have been, the fact that they have a free trade agreement amongst them has actually helped them to boost intra-regional trade, so trade within those countries. And you have to understand that to grow, you need to develop the trade within your closest communities and then expanding outside, especially for developing markets. So we tend to promote this a lot. Now, why is this important to you? I believe most of my audience today are based in Africa and looking to expand either regionally or globally. So you need to understand how these different blocks work. So whether you are in ECOWAS, what is required to move products from one country within the ECOWAS block to another? Which products are allowed? You need to understand that. Now, moving forward, there is the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. This is one agreement that has been passed now in 2018. It goes through some technical negotiations and discussions called ratification before it gets implemented. It was meant to be implemented July 1st this year, but has been, like everything else, affected by COVID. We're hoping that this will be implemented by January 2021. Once this gets implemented, depending on the list, there is going to be a lot of free movement of goods and services across Africa. Today, about 30 countries have already ratified this agreement. amongst those 30 countries, if they choose to trade using the AFCFTA, they can actually get these goods and services freely across those countries. The more countries that actually join the AFCFTA, the more valuable it will become to us. So if you look at the chart on my right, the countries in red are the countries that have already ratified and that are ready to go into the AFCFTA. We're obviously encouraging all the other countries to join. So understanding this will be helpful in your trade, and also understanding that even though there is a free trade, there will also be exclusion lists amongst the countries. Countries will protect what is sensitive to them and liberalize everything else. But the good thing about AFCFTA is the intention is to liberalize 90% of goods and services across Africa. I'm actually quite excited about the AFCFTA, and I'm looking forward to seeing it materialize across Africa. Just to tell you a little bit more about the benefits of the AFCFTA, I dug out this video where this guy talks a little bit more about the benefits of AFCFTA. You'll see, the African continent is a continent of 1.2 billion people. So I'll just let you listen to this.
Sorry, Toby, you might have to unshare and reshare your screen because it's just showing it as gray at the moment.
Okay. I'm going to just reshare to ensure that you can see that video. And back here. It's taking a while to just reconnect. Oh, sorry. Can you see my video?
It didn't come up yet.
It didn't come up?
Yeah, the screen hasn't been shared yet.
Okay. Okay. It's going to share shortly. It should be coming up now. I will just replay this.
Great, we can see it now. I think there's an issue with the sound not coming through now because you can see the video but not hear it.
Can you see it?
We can, but we can't hear it. I don't think the sound comes through.
It's on the max volume.
I think it's probably a problem with WebEx not sharing the sound off the screen.
Okay.
But if I'm correct, it's in the slides, which we will share with the ladies on the call.
So yeah, sorry about that. The link is in the slide, and I can share it. I can share it after the call or with the presentation. So, well, essentially, what that was telling us were some of the benefits of the AFCFTA, the fact that you can reach 1.2 billion people in Africa, and the fact that it's going to increase Africa's prosperity, or GDP, by about 52%. So it's a very exciting period, or a very exciting agreement that we hope really comes into fruition. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so at this point, having shared with you part of the objectives, what you need to do before going global, what to do when you decide to go global on marketing as well as digital engagement, a few concepts of international trade, and how to utilize the free trade agreement. I'm going to stop briefly here and check if there are any questions.
Great, we do have a few questions. One would be with regards to the preference programs, how do we access this information? Is there a government database in each country that speaks to it? And would the Department of Trade and Industry be the ideal platform to obtain that information?
Yes, thank you for that question. All the countries involved have this domiciled within their Department of Trade and Industry. But if we're looking at any of the trade agreements, many of them also have their own websites. So whether it's AFCFTA, whether it's the SADC, whether it's ECOWAS, they all have websites where you can get information. But to get more detailed or to do your secondary research, I would then encourage you to visit your investment promotion commissions or councils in your different countries. Their job is to help you facilitate this international trade and give you all the tools and all the resources necessary. So it could be a DTI, it could also be your like Invest SA or the investment promotion councils in your countries.
Great. And then this one is with regards to understanding the culture in different countries you may want to expand into. What if you don't have the budget to go and visit that country to understand the culture? How do you work around that?
Okay, there are several ways you can do this. So you will still be in your case in your stage of primary research because you'll be getting the third party version. There are culture experts that you can engage in any country that you're in who can then tell you about what operates. They're experts. So like I lived in the US and they're experts for every country available. If I wanted to get an immersion on Bangladesh while living in the US, I can get an expert on Southeast Asia or Bangladeshi specifically to give me an onboarding and insight on the culture of that particular country. At the end of the day, when you decide to go global, it is not encouraged that you launch your business into a country that you do not understand. You don't have to be the person that physically goes there, but it's best if you cannot go there, then to have a partner there that can help you with understanding the culture, the norms, the standards, and the requirements of those places. There are several things you can also do. You can also visit the embassies of these countries in your own country of origin. Most countries have the major countries with embassies in their country. So if I want to export to Cote d'Ivoire, and I live in Gambia, for instance, most likely there's an embassy or a high commission of Cote d'Ivoire in Gambia. I go there, they have a commercial department. Their job is to promote their country. This is what DTI does for South Africa, the Invest SA arm. Their job is to project the country to anybody who is interested and willing in investing in that country. So there are many avenues. So your embassies, your departments of trade, and worst case, you get a private culture expert to give you those insights. But it is important to get those insights.
Great, and there's two questions on entry port, which I'm going to couple as one. It would be, can you give some examples of P&G products that are doing entry port in Africa, and can you do entry port with dry food?
With what?
With dry food.
Okay, so I don't claim to be an expert across sectors because we don't have any foods in our stable. However, I believe that once you understand your supply chain, you would know if it's possible to source certain materials from another country to complement or to add value to like a semi-finished goods that you produce in another country. I believe it's possible for dry food. So if, for instance, you need barley, just for the sake of argument, and there's lots of or excess barley in one country, you can then choose to have all your premix of every other thing except the barley made in your own country and then ship that premix to the country that has excess and cheap barley and have your final products actually made in that country, considering, again, if all the production elements, costs, and everything else is also suitable in that country. So it is quite possible. Now, in terms of entry port operations in Africa, we don't have any of this yet in Africa. If in context, we're a 187-year-old company. around the world, but in Africa, we're about 25 years old. We have focused on establishing manufacturing plants in Africa. So we have in Egypt, in Morocco, in Nigeria, in South Africa, where we produce products that meet the needs of the African consumers. Obviously, as time goes by, we continue to assess and we talk to our consumers to understand what they need and see how best we can bring in that expertise from one country to the other. But there are a lot of opportunities to do that across Africa and indeed across several other regions.
Great. And I think in the sake of time, we can move on and touch on remaining questions at the end.
Thanks for those questions. So now that you've had the time to ask me your questions, now I'm going to ask you my own questions just to check that you've been listening. So we've talked about several aspects of international trade, what it takes to access international markets. Now, I want you to tell me which of these factors determines your success in regional and international markets. And before I reveal that, the reason why I call it bridging the gap is usually there's a huge gap between the SMEs in a country and the multinational companies that access those markets. The intent by those MNCs like ourselves is to integrate a number of these SMEs into our value chain. In order to do that, they need to meet certain criteria. So that's what I call bridging the gap. What are the things that we need to do to ensure that we're successful accessing these markets? Now, as I ask these questions, please use the chat box on your right to type in your answers. So what is the most, which factors determine your success in regional and international markets? Is it your speed to market, how fast you can get to the market? Is it meeting regulatory requirements? Is it your price? Or is it your quality and standard? So this is a 30-second question. Please type in your answers very quickly. Which of these actually determines your success? 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, while you are answering those questions, I will start to take you then through the thinking behind each one of these factors. So when we talk about speed to market, for instance, what does speed to market depend on? Okay, it depends on infrastructure that is available in a place. How fast you can get your goods from one place to the other. I like to give my examples of when I was in the supply chain. I used to need to export products produced in Nigeria to Ghana. Nigeria and Ghana are very close to each other, but there wasn't a lot of trade between those two countries. It was faster for me to ship my products to Europe from Nigeria and then from Europe to Ghana because those lanes had been created. This was quite a while ago. We've come a long way from that. And again, that's one of the reasons why free trade agreements like the AFCFTA will help us to create those lanes and enable us to transfer goods cheaper across Africa. Infrastructure, road, rail, internet, communication, and everything. So essentially, these are factors that affect everybody in the market. So it can't be the singular factor, can it? Okay. Then we move to price. Your price obviously is a factor of what you put in, your production costs, your cost of labor. Are you in a labor in a country where labor is expensive or where labor is cheap? Is your production labor intensive or highly mechanized? What are your processing costs? All these costs, make up your price. So is price the biggest factor in launching you into international trade? You have to be competitive. So highly unlikely. Many people find out that the variability between consumer goods, for instance, between one competitor and the other, usually in the range of 7%. So it's unlikely that you're going to win on the basis of price. And we never compete on the basis of price. Rather, we like to communicate our value to the consumer, the value they get. The second thing is, the third thing are regulations. We've been talking about liberalization of trade and several things. But there are risks when you start to move products from one place to the other. So the government has to put in regulations. We need to meet these regulations. I gave examples of when I was expanding the business into Greater West Africa, and I had to do both my primary and secondary research, visiting those countries, understanding the regulations, applying them to our products before we actually ship them. This is something, again, that pertains to everybody. So it's not exactly a point of differentiation. How many of you got this? Michael, can you tell us what does the poll look like?
So almost everyone says that all four are applicable. So all four is the correct answer.
True, all four are applicable, but what is the most important in expanding into international markets? It is, so like I mentioned, all those, the first three, are applicable to everybody. What makes you stand out? What makes me pick your product and not the next person's product? What makes your product actually be the desired product in this new country that you're expanding into? Meeting the standards and the quality. If you remember at the beginning when I was talking about free trade agreements, AGOA is an example of a preferential trade agreement where for nothing, you can just, once you meet the right standards, you can ship your products at zero duty to the US. But if you do not meet the standards required, you cannot do that. Many people struggle to meet those standards. Now, when I bring it back home to integrating SMEs into our value chains, these are some of the challenges that we see ourselves. We've worked with several SMEs to try and bring up their standards. So it is one thing that gives you an edge, and it's one thing that you need to pay very, very close attention to: quality and standards. So why again are we talking about why is it important for us? There's so many reasons. I talked about the Nike example, where they did not understand, simple one, the culture, and they produced an item which ended up causing offense in that country. And it took them years to get the sales that they needed back in that region. So you want to avoid waste, recall, the cost, that's involved, and then more importantly, also the reputational damage that could result from not practicing good quality standards. One last thing I would say here about expanding into international markets, I mentioned it briefly earlier as well, was to leverage the e-channel. Today, this is it's a no-brainer. You have to. If your business is not yet online, with what we have on ground now with COVID-19, you really need to start thinking of how to get your business online. One of the ways in which we have continued to grow during this period is to expand our offerings on e-commerce. So we've partnered with a lot more e-commerce merchants, so like the Jumias, the Kongas, even big retailers that have online stores. So this is one way in which you can get your goods and services across the world. An author once spoke to me. She was writing books, and she wasn't quite sure how she could fast track the sales of those books. This was the time when Amazon Books was just starting, but her mind was really around, I need to print, I need to get the printer, I need to print the books, then I need to put them on shelves and I need to sell them. The ship has sailed. That was the time, people were selling books on Amazon, then ebooks, then there was Kindle, and so many other e-channels. Today we're in audio books, video books. So you have to stay ahead of that game. Leverage the e-channel for your own specific sector. I'm going to stop here again for any more questions that you might have, either as an SME trying to integrate into a global value chain, what challenges you've seen, or any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Toby. So we don't have any questions on the chat. So anyone on the call, if you have any questions on what was discussed, can you please send them through in the chat?
Okay. So I'll move on very swiftly then. So we're going to now talk on our last bucket, which is business ethics and reputation. So what is business ethics? It's again just a study of the appropriate business policies and practices regarding potential controversial subjects, including corporate governance, insider trading, bribery, discrimination, corporate social responsibility, your fiduciary responsibilities as a board member, and so many of such. I have a quote here from Warren Buffett, who is actually a board member, a big shareholder at P&G. And he says it takes 20 years to build a reputation and just 5 minutes to ruin it. This holds true both in business as well as in personal life. You spend all the time trying to create your brand, create a very strong image, but if you do not have the right ethics, if you do not practice good standards, you can ruin this in a minute. Now, I lead government relations across the region. I talk to several governments across, several countries, 50 countries across the continent. All these countries are different stages of development, are different stages of understanding. I need to ensure that no matter which country I'm in, I'm a PNG, whether I'm in Turkey or I'm in South Africa or I'm in US or I'm in, Cote d'Ivoire. We maintain the same standards and ethics. We have what we call our PVPs, our principles, values, and PVPs. We have our PVPs, which guides us through how we address issues across all these countries. So we maintain our high values and standards, and we maintain them anywhere that we go. So again, why is reputation important? We talk about a VUCA world. The world has changed. The meaning of VUCA. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. The era of social media has made it even more vocal. There's so much information out there and increasing mistrust. You've all heard, the term fake news, and people, making pictures that are not real and, feeding us with all sorts. So how do we go through all the information that is out there and ensure that we're actually accessing the right information? So there is so much information out there. How do you also stand out among the crowd? If you go to the shampoo aisle in any store, there are at least 50 brands there. Why do you choose the brand that you choose? What propels you? Think about that as well when you build your own brand. But reputation is important because of the kind of world we're in today. Again, your target audience has changed. Your audience is more demanding today. Your audience no longer just asks for quality goods and services. They want to know the values of the company behind that product. Then we talk about citizenship and corporate social responsibility, but not just as giving. It's actually even advancing in today's world where your consumers are asking you to take a stand on social issues, whether it's diversity, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the issue of gender-based violence. What do you stand for? You need to be known for something, but it's because your consumers are more demanding. They want to know that the company that I'm buying their products are socially responsible and they stand and believe in the same values that I believe in. I was saying, what's changed? We don't know anymore. VUCA's gone. It's COVID-19 now. We have a pandemic on our hands. It's evolving. We really don't know at this stage where it's going to land, when it's going to end, what is actually going to change. I've sat through a number of meetings where we have been planning and we're thinking ahead and we're providing solutions to the future of the work, the future of production, the future of how we do this and that. But the truth is, nobody really has the answers. A few months ago, none of us knew we're going to be in the position that we're in today. I'm having this conference now from home. In the past, I would have to sit in front of my, VCR in the office to make sure I had, good sound quality, good pictures, and it's well projected to you all. We've been working from home now, many of us, for months. Are we ever going to go back to work? It's a question. Many of you need to consider these changes as well as in the new dispensation. What works for you? What is it that you need to adapt in the new world that we're in to continue to be successful? And then again, to expand. Talking about expanding into regional and global markets, a big change is going to happen with the incidence of COVID-19 because it will be easier to actually move services between countries. So this is actually the time to start looking at those opportunities to go global if you're thinking about those already. Why again is reputation important? I know this is a highly publicized case, so I just want to share this case study, which is also being used in a number of business schools. And I share it because the company involved has managed to turn that bad image around, but it cost them a lot. It cost them time. It cost them money. It cost them their main currency, which is their reputation. It took a lot of effort and dedication by their new manager at the time to change the entire culture of the company, which at that time was steeped deep in corruption. Its main strategy of going to market was to bribe government officials. So, I mean, even junior people saw it happening, but they couldn't talk, but because, well, the bosses wanted it to be done that way. But this man came and, he had to change the culture of the place, probably, had to also weed out all the people who had that kind of mentality in Siemens, and had to birth a new company that is respected and standing today. A number of other companies never recovered. Some of us might remember Enron, done, gone. One scandal and it's all gone. But why it's also very important is the cost of an investigation. The cost of it is not just in monetary terms, but on your resources. It's draining on your people. It's draining energy from productive activities that should actually propel your company forward, and you're spending it with auditors and lawyers and court cases and all these things. Guard your reputation. For us, as reputation is inseparable from our go-to-market strategies. It's actually one of the foundations. Again, just a quick wrap up on business ethics for executives. What are the things we need to look at? So today we're looking at just basic human factors: your honesty, your integrity. Do you come across as real to people? Are you bringing your authentic self into discussions, into negotiations? When you give a promise, do you keep it? You remember when I was talking about the first moments of truth? Do your products that you have communicated on media, does it actually deliver when your consumer actually gets that product? So your loyalty, are you fair? You have concern for others. What do you stand for? I talked about your consumers being more demanding, consumers wanting to know what good you're doing and what are your beliefs. So all these things actually build up into building your reputation and ultimately your brand. Now, I will be wrapping up here and just share a summary. We've talked about the 4 objectives of today's course, the issues to consider before going global. Once you've made a decision, the items to consider as well in terms of branding and digital engagement, a short concept of international trade, what it means, trade agreements, where they are, how to utilize them, and how to access them. And again, I cannot overemphasize that the benefits of going global or international is quite high if you get it right. I give the example of P&G also starting as an SME, and today is this conglomerate that you have out there. And a number of other African companies are also doing this as well. I talked about it enabling comparative advantage. So what you're good at, it supports the economies of scale. So the more you can produce in a particular place, the cheaper your cost and the better value you can offer your international customers. So it also helps us to get better, improves our competitiveness by increasing the standards of operation across the region. Technology transfer is another thing. A number of companies come in, they promote a different technology, we learn from them, we reapply, we adapt them, and we all keep getting better, and we all keep devising new and better ways of doing businesses. Like I said, if you take nothing away from this training, is understanding cultural differences. It can make or mar your business. Like I said, we are deeply immersed in our consumers. We understand not just their needs, we understand their aspirations. We understand where they want to get to from here. So we design to meet those aspirations. So cultural differences is very important. I've also mentioned some of the ways in which you can immerse yourself in culture. If you cannot visit a place, there are so many other sources who are immersed themselves who can help guide you. If you're going into a country where you don't speak the language, of course, then it makes sense. Get an interpreter, get somebody to interpret your website into the language of the country that you're going into. More importantly, for all these concepts, you need to ensure that it is sustained. It's not, quality is not, on today, off tomorrow. It needs to be consistent to build your brand over the years, and maintaining high standards and your quality will actually help to propel you out there in the international market. I hope that the discussions you have had today with the short concepts, it's you can have a 3-day training on accessing international and regional markets. I hope you're all encouraged. If any one of you have been thinking about expanding into regional markets, these are some of the concepts. And also now is the time to start thinking about the new world, the new normal, as we call it. And I wish you all the very best of luck. I hope I've been able to share some ideas with you today and got you all thinking of the next steps. Thank you very much and wish you all the best.
That was amazing. We do have a few more questions for you that Mikhail's going to cover, but I was just going to close as we're now just after 3 o'clock for the video recording. So thank you so much. Your energy was so positive. There's a lot of information that you've covered there. We really must get you back. My background is also working in stakeholder and management and communications in Africa, having worked in the mining sector for over 7 years, including for Rio Tinto. And I know how complex Africa can be: languages, culture, governments, everything. But like you said, the opportunities are vast. And I've seen it for myself. Opportunities are out there, and women business owners need to be out there. And we always talk about collaboration, and I encourage women in collaborate. And you can also collaborate with women from other countries. On this call, we actually have women from other African countries. Nigeria's on. We've got women from Mozambique. There's women out there who want to find other like-minded businesswomen to collaborate with. So I'm just going to close, and then we'll carry on with the questions, if you don't mind. This is Jean Chawapiwa from We Connect International in South Africa. Thank you for joining this amazing webinar that we've had today. And for those who are not self-registered with We Connect yet, it's very simple. You go to our website, weconnectinternational.org, and you do self-registration, and it's free. And then you'll get invitations to webinars like this and access to experts like yourself who want to work with more women-owned businesses. We Connect was set up to find, register, certify women-owned businesses so corporates like P&G can do business with them. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to hand over to Mikhail to do the final questions. And just a reminder to everybody on the call that we will be sending you a feedback form. We would really appreciate getting you to just spend a few moments to fill it in, so our sister can understand how amazing she's been and that she must come back and share more with us. So Mikhail, back over to you.